Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the solo mode for Agropolis, coming from designers Stephen Aramini, Danny Devine, and Paul Kluka, and publisher Button Shy Games. In Agropolis, you are playing as farm planners trying to maximize the structure and layout of your farm to score the most points. It's essentially a card-laying game. So let's head over to the table. I'll show you how the game is set up and plays. Then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, this is everything that composes a game of Agropolis. You've got the little wallet that you keep the components in, you've got the rule book here, and you've got really the only components in the game, which is this deck of 18 cards. Each of these cards are double-sided. On one side, they are composed of the blocks, the different colored regions that you're going to be placing into your player area to score points. How are you scoring these points? That's on the reverse side of these cards. The reverse side of these cards all have different scoring conditions, okay? And some of them are oriented differently because you can play the cards in different orientations. That doesn't really matter. So I'm going to show you how you play as a solo game, but really, essentially, if you play with multiple players, you can play up to four, It plays exactly the same way. It's a cooperative game. You just are kind of passing cards to your teammates. So let me just show you how the solo game plays. You shuffle up the deck, and what you're going to do is you're going to draw the top 3 cards, and those are going to determine your scoring conditions for the game. All right, so you take the cards and you turn them to their scoring side. All right, here in this case we've got country roads, utterly impossible, and swine country. All right, and all these are going to do is show you how you score points at the end of the game. For example, country road says 2 points per road that passes through more cornfield blocks than any other type, which are the yellow blocks, okay? That's one of the 3 scoring conditions. The other thing that this does is you look at the numbers in the top left of the card, and that's going to give you a scoring goal to determine whether you are successful at the end of the game. So in this case, 25 points is the threshold I'm trying to reach. If I reach 25 points at the end of the game, I have won, okay? And that's done, again, at the end of the game after you determine some other scoring that I'll show you in a moment. So basically, in a solo game, what I would do is I would draw 3 cards. That's going to be my hand. And I play the cards out into this central area with some very simple rules. So first card I play down might be that one. I redraw up to 3. The placement rules are pretty simple. On your turn, you have to place a card so that at least one block edge meets an existing block edge. And you can also play it so that it overlaps or covers a block or even multiple blocks. But you can't play a card like this. You can't just go corner to corner. So if I wanted to, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this, 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 this. I think you get the idea. You can even leave gaps, but you can leave a gap by going something like this, which you could then cover up, but you can't slide a card underneath an existing card. So very simple placement rules. But you place the cards out, continue to draw back, maybe doing something like this, I'm drawing back, I'm coming out here. Again, all of the cards you're going to be doing based upon the scoring conditions that you have in that particular game, and those are obviously going to change from game to game. Playing out cards. Again, I'm not paying any attention really to what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of showing you how you play the cards out. They do have to be placed, if I didn't mention that already, horizontally. All right. But you can change the orientation, all right, and as long as they're horizontal, you can rotate 180 degrees, something like this. Okay, so after you've played out all of your cards, then you're going to go to final scoring. And final scoring is going to go in this manner. First of all, you're going to check your scoring for your different blocks, all right? And again, I don't have a full map here, so this isn't going to really give you a good idea. But for each of the different types of blocks, you're going to get 1 point per each in that group. So for example, in red here, I would get 3 points because that's my largest showing block, all right? You do that for all of the different colors. Then you're going to score negative points for every road. Okay, so right now this would be horrible for me because I've got roads all over the place. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So negative 8 points just showing here. So again, I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to how I was placing these out. I would have to really keep that in mind. Then you would go and score based on your 3 scoring cards. The combination of all of those points, the block scoring, the negative points for the roads, and the scoring that you get for these cards, that's what you're going to compare to the threshold that you had to meet, in this case, 25 points. If you have done so, you are successful. If you have not done so, you lose. All right, well, that's Agropolis in a nutshell. Let's head back over and I'll tell you what I think. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea on how the solo game of Agropolis plays. It really is the same thing when you're playing as a multiplayer game, as a cooperative game. You just kind of pass along 2 of the cards that you would have and you draw 1. And so everyone is working together to try to meet those scoring goals. First thing I wanted to mention is that Agropolis, being in this Button Shy line, is a sequel, a standalone sequel to Sprawlopolis, which is a game that works essentially the same way. You can actually combine the two with this Combopolis little kind of, I don't know if you call it an expansion, but it allows you to put the 2 games together. But I just figured I'd mention that right off the bat because if you've played one, you might want to know what the similarities are. They're very similar. You can actually combine them in such a way that you use this Combopolis. So first thing I like to do is talk about some solo benchmarks. These are the things I look to when I decide what solo game I want to pull off the shelf. So the first thing is a win-loss condition. Does it have a clear win-loss condition, or is it a beat your high score type of a game? Well, in Agropolis, this is a win-loss condition. And honestly, normally in these types of games, because this is very much a puzzle game, in these types of games, I don't mind a high score variant, but this kind of gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds. I really love the scoring aspect of this game, that every single card has a scoring condition on the back. That is really a cool way of handling a win-loss condition. And so, your threshold might be 15 points in one game and 45 in another, but again, they've got to be tuned to the difficulty of the cards so that that makes sense. But it's an interesting way of doing it, but a clear win-loss condition in this particular game. Setup and teardown is something I also like to discuss, and my goodness, I don't know that you can get a quicker setup and teardown than Agropolis. I mean, it's almost set up just by pulling it out of the wallet. I mean, there's really nothing to it. You shuffle the cards, top 3 get turned over for scoring, and you draw your cards and you're ready to go. Very, very quick, lightning quick to set up, and teardown is just putting the cards back in the wallet. Very, very good in that aspect. The rules are another thing I like to discuss, and it's a very simple rule set. There's not a lot of rules to the game, and what there are clear and well written. I have no complaints at all about the rules. That small pamphlet covers just about everything that you need to know. Most of the variability, most of the things that could add a little bit of complexity are on the backs of the cards, on the scoring cards. But I have found that they've done a very good job of explaining what the scoring conditions are. And so some of them can be more complicated than others. Some of them are very straightforward, very easy to understand, but others have a little bit more nuance and complexity to them. But I feel like even on those cards, they do a good job of explaining what that scoring condition is so that you don't feel like there's any ambiguity to it. So a good job with the rules. Art and components is another thing I like to discuss, and this is a tricky one because this game is so minimalistic. I mean, there's really very little art, and 18 cards are your components, unless you want to count the wallet here as a component as well. And that's actually something I'm going to discuss later. But the art is fine. I mean, I don't look at this as a game that has stellar art, but it's certainly not unattractive. It's not something that on the table is unappealing or puts you off. I don't think it's something if you walk by, you go, oh my gosh, that's ugly. Not at all. But it's also not something that's going to wow you, where you're going to walk by and go, whoa, what is that? It's perfectly functional. It works just fine for the type of game it is. But there's not a lot of art there. There's not a lot of components in the game, so it's difficult to spend too much time discussing it. The overall solo experience. Okay, well, Agropolis is a great solo puzzle. I could say the same thing about Sprawlopolis, because essentially these are kindred games. They are sequels to each other. They inform each other. They can be played together. And so I really thought Sprawlopolis was a terrific game, and Agropolis is no different. It's a really good spatial puzzle game that just scratches that itch that I oftentimes have of placing out things in patterns and in orientations to try to be most efficient. The variability in this game is immense. You would think that with 18 cards that, how could the variability be? How could the replayability be? It's very high, very, very high, because the combination of those scoring cards can completely change your strategies, can really, really, really change the way you approach a particular game. And so I think that to take 18 cards and have the amount of variability is a really impressive achievement. And so that's something that I find as a huge positive for the game. Also, it plays very quickly. It very much has that one more time appeal, especially if you've lost. I have found that if I actually win, I want to end on a win. I'm like, yes, I did it. Because to me, maybe some people are good at these types of games. Well, good at any types of games. I'm not. When I win in Agropolis, I feel like I've accomplished something. And I usually like to end on a win. But if I've lost, I usually like to try at least one more time, maybe two more times, and try to snatch that elusive win from the jaws of defeat. I'm not very good at Agropolis or Sprawlopolis for that matter, but I still enjoy playing it. The scoring system, as I mentioned, super smart. I really, really, I just appreciate that from a design standpoint. The way it works, the way that there's that little anticipation at the beginning of each game where you flip those over and go, oh, wow, okay. So these are my things. Sometimes the scoring conditions compete against each other. Other times they work in tandem. I really like that kind of reveal of finding out what the scoring conditions are. A couple of possible negatives would be that for such a small game, I mean, this is it, it can have a relatively large footprint depending upon how you lay out your cards. And so you might think, oh, this is a game that I could easily play on a TV tray, or if I'm in a plane. Not necessarily. I'm not saying you couldn't, but it's a little bit bigger of a footprint than you might expect. And so that is something to keep in mind. If this is a game that you're thinking about using to travel with, and sure, why not? Because look at the actual product itself. You do have to keep in mind that your play area has to be a little bit bigger than you might initially think just looking at a small deck of cards. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, this packaging, look, this is basically Button Shy's thing. They have these wallet games. They're known as wallet games. I happen to think it's very cool. I think it's nice. Do I ever put them in my wallet? No. Do I ever put them in my back pocket? No. I suppose I could. But they don't take up a lot of space. However, that being said, for some people that really like to pay attention to the organization of their games and where they place them, the fact that it's an unusual, it's not a deck box, it's not something that you can easily perhaps place on a shelf next to your other card games, that may be off-putting to some people. But that's really all of the Button Shy games. That's nothing specific to Agropolis. I have no problem with it. I think the Button Shy kind of system here of these wallet games is cute, it's clever, it works for me, but it might be a negative to some people, not necessarily to me. Overall, I think that Agropolis is a really clever, really fun solo puzzle. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, seal of approval. I think this is a game that I could very easily recommend to somebody that wants a game that is inexpensive, doesn't take up a lot of room on your shelves, quick to play, quick to set up, and quick to tear down. Agropolis does a lot of things very well. All right, well, that's it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower headquarters.